All right, guys. So we're gonna start ecology here this term. We're gonna just start very basic, and then we're gonna work to much more specific and things like that. So basic question: what is ecology? Right? Ecology is just the study of organisms and their interaction with the environment. So usually when I say organisms, most people think of like dogs, cats, big things like elephants, stuff like that. But it also indicates and also takes into account every little tiny organism that we can't even see. Protista, bacteria, all these things are part of the ecosystem, all right, and therefore part of ecology. It explains how organisms live off of each other and affect each other, and about how we can really, especially nowadays, it's more turned into how can we either help the species or how can we not mess this species up too much. That's kind of where ecology is turned to in a lot of our lives, is more conservation ecology and things like that. All right, so two terms that we really need to get familiar with because we'll be talking about them all year long is a habitat and a niche. So if I were to say a habitat, if I was so put it this way, if I were to ask you a polar bear's habitat, you would say cold, ice, say like North Pole, South Pole, something like that. Okay, and that would be perfectly correct. Okay, because it's just a general place where the animal lives. So that's all we really got, a place where it lives, and that's about it as far as habitat goes. Now, when it comes to a niche is much more specific. A niche is the organism's total way of life. What do I mean by that? Okay. So I gave this example, and I think it's a good one. If I said bird, okay, most people are going to say habitat is going to be a tree of some kind, and by and large, that is correct. There are some animals, or bird, avi, that nest in the ground, but are on the ground, but most of them are living in trees. So trees would be a perfect little answer for that. But now if I go into more detail, bluebird and a hawk, a raptor of some kind. All right, we start to talk about a niche. Okay, so this is the organism's total way of life. Okay, so we talk about, let's say, food first. So nuts, seeds, maybe some insects, stuff like that. Hawk, they're going to eat small animals, all right, fish, rodents, squirrels, all right, things like that. So we can see how for the habitat, the tree is both correct, but now we start getting into the finer points of it. So like food, shelter, all right. So these guys usually like 6 to 10 feet off the ground. They don't really like to be too far off the ground. This is top of the tree. Okay. So different living spaces, and they could be in the same tree, just in different living environments on it. Right? The smaller birds are going to usually lay larger clutches of eggs, 6 to maybe 8 at most. Larger birds are going to lay 3 to 4 eggs. So reproduction, or repro just for reproduction. So we can see here that we already have some differences. So all this stuff would be the bird's niche. Okay. All this stuff would be the hawk's niche. They live in the same habitat, but they have different niches, 100%, no questions. All right, abiotic versus biotic. So A in front of any scientific word means no. Biotic means, or bio means life, so no life. Now, this is any non-living part of the ecosystem, all right? Now, when I say non-living, I don't mean it died. It was never alive, okay? Never alive. Rocks, temperature, moisture, rain, water, air currents, wind, soil. Okay. Yes, there are things alive in the soil, but I'm talking about just the rocks and the dirt and the minerals that make up the soil. Okay. There are a ton of abiotic factors in organisms' lives. They can have a very large effect. Okay. If we look at just rain, all right, in the desert, don't get a lot of rain. Tropical rainforest, get a lot of rain. We have very different species that live in both areas. Like we have frogs in both areas, for example. There are frogs that live in the deserts, more toads, but anyway. Amphibians that do live in the desert, they have special ways and mechanisms and behaviors to help them deal with the low amount of water, where there's more frogs in the rainforest, and they don't have some of the same adaptations to deal with them. Okay, there's mammals in both. All right, just different adaptations for different ecological systems. Okay, so these abiotic factors can have a huge effect on whatever the animal is in that environment. So biotic factors, just the opposite of that. Any living factor. All organisms depend on each other for food, shelter, reproduction, protection. All right. We have symbiotic relationships, which we'll talk about later, where they rely on each other very closely for all their needs. So, some examples. Biotic or abiotic? This is biotic. You might not be able to see it. It's at the very bottom there. As I said in class, if you've never seen the actual size of an anglerfish compared to a human, you should look it up. They're a much larger animal than you think. Twisty, aka tornado. That would be abiotic. It is not alive. Never was alive. The rocks in the ocean here, you would say, or the water, you would say abiotic. All right. Don't be one of those people that say, well, technically, there are fish in the water, so it would be biotic. No. Just don't overthink it, guys. You see rocks, you see water, it's abiotic. All right, here's a sponge. All right, this is definitely biotic. A lot of us think of coral and some of these other kind of things. We see them like sitting on the shelves at the beach in the little trinket store. And like, oh, that's cool. That's a little cool piece of art. Or oh, it's like kind of like a rock. It's not. These are both living organisms. So biotic. All right, so moving on from biotic versus abiotic, we're going to talk about levels of organization. Now, we talked about levels of organization when we talked about cells, atoms, and things like that. Like we started with an atom, went to a molecule, all right, went all the way up to an individual or an organism, okay? Well, since we're talking about ecological stuff, very much macrobiology, all right, we're going to start at that base where we ended the last one and go forward from there, okay? So, first one is organism. Sometimes you see online, you see species used here. That's a poor example because this one and the next level all have to do with the same species. So, if you see organism or individual in the caption, that's perfectly fine, but species is not the correct answer. This is just one individual of a species that can reproduce, grow, respond, develop, all those kind of things. Next would be population. This is a group of the same species, which means they can interbreed, aka make babies. All right. Now here's the key part of this. They live in the same place at the same time. So we are different, especially as humans, because I could say, man, forget this whole teaching thing. I'm going to go live in China and be a farmer. Whatever. I can get up, put some plane ticket on my debit card, and roll out to China tomorrow. If the zebra one day wakes up on the savannah and is like, man, is it hot? I want to leave. He can't do that. Okay? So that's not really an option. So we're kind of an oddball in a lot of these little scenarios. So same place. These are all in the same place and at the same time frame. Okay? You are not in a population with your great-great-great-great-grandparents. Okay? You are not in the same time period. Okay? We are not technically in the same place. Like zebras here, all right, on the savannah are not in the same place as like the zebras at the zoo. Okay, so I know these are some kind of extreme examples, but they have to be in the same place at the same time in the same species. Okay, they can have babies. All right, a biological community. Now, the term biological, and a lot of times you'll just see community, which is fine. You won't see the biological portion, which is fine. But this is a collection of different species that live in the same place, same time. So once again, got to follow those rules, same place, same time. Okay, but here, as opposed to just one biotic kind of factor, so to speak, all right, we have a bunch. So this is everything in the biotic community. All right, kind of like I said, gives it away when it says biology, but if you see community, it means the same thing. So here we have grasses, we have wildebeest, we have zebras, we have these little things in the back, which you can't figure out what they are. We got trees, we got shrubs, we got everything going on here. Okay, so we have a bunch of biotic factors here that make up this community. Now, the next one, ecosystems, are more or less the exact same as a community. However, we take into account the abiotic components of this environment, whatever environment, we're talking about, showing you pictures. So here, I'm talking about, you notice it's just things that are live or were once alive. I'm not talking about the plant, or not talking about the clouds or the sunshine or anything like that. Well, here in this picture, we can plainly see we got a big old hot sun here. Got some dust getting kicked up by these animals, so it's obviously dry. Okay, and then we also have multiple species in here. We've got an elephant, we have a giraffe, we have the plants and all that kind of stuff. So we have taken into account both abiotic and biotic. Okay, it's muy importante. All right, and then last but not least is the biosphere. This is the portion of the earth that supports life. So tallest mountains approximately like 6-7 miles up. All right, deepest valley is about Marianas Trench. So we'll call this sea level. So we've got, approximately 11 to 12 miles of animals that live from the very bottom of the Mariana Trench all the way to the top of the tallest peaks in the Himalayas. Now, there are some bacteria and things like that that live in the outer troposphere. We will never come in contact with them, but they are still living, and so they are still out there and supported part of the biosphere. Bio, life, sphere means, 3D circle. All right. So anything on here that support anywhere that life is supported is the biosphere. Okay, so life is found all over and anywhere as long as it is encapsulated in the biosphere. It is where we can find and life is supported. That's all for this video. We're done. Let's do some levels of organization real quick. Psych, I guess we're not done. So what level of organization is this? We just got Simba. Boom, organism, good. So if I were to say only the biotic components of this picture, you would say it is a community. If I were to say everything you see in this picture, you would say an ecosystem, because not only do we have all of our animals at Pride Rock, okay, we also have Pride Rock itself, and we have the sun, we have the clouds, we have all the stuff going on. All right, we got 2 organisms, same place, same time, or 2 exact same species, so that would be a population. All right, so that's it. That's where we'll stop it for today. If you have questions, bring them into class.